If you're going to take the medicine, you have to take the medicine. But if you're not, then just right now for your mental and your mental health, then don't.
Welcome to Positive Voices, and today we will be talking about living with HIV. We have a very special guest. My name is Malachi Stewart. My pronoun preferences are he, him, his.
And I'm Leah Henry, and my pronouns are she and her.
And I'm Gregory Meredith. My pronouns are he, him, and his.
Listen, I'm really excited for today's show because, I think it's so important that when we're talking about the spectrum of HIV, it's important to hear the stories of the people who are living with HIV and talking about your journeys, because we've talked about in other episodes, breaking the stigma, right? But I think it's so important to dive into the lives of people who are living with HIV. And I love that you're here with us today, Greg, because I think that this episode is going to help a lot of people see what the day-to-day life is like for someone living with HIV.
Yes.
Absolutely. And so, I'm really interested. Listen, you and I have worked in the field. We're both living with HIV, got that out the way.
Yeah.
So because of that, we've heard a lot of people's stories. And a lot of times the stories tend to be watered down, or we sort of get the safe narrative. And so I really welcome the conversation with you to really have that real conversation. So I think a good place to start would be the diagnosis. What was that day like for you? What was that moment like for you? Walk us through that.
So that moment was very shaky for me. I was first in high school, senior in high school, ready to graduate, just months before. And I got a text message saying that this person that I had recently had sex with, was HIV positive and that I need to go get myself checked out. So of course I was shaking in my boots. I'm in music class, don't know what to do. I called my grandmother. Hey, Ma, I think I need to leave school. I need to go get tested.
Oh, wow.
So I leave school. I go to the doctor's up Georgia National Medical Center where I was getting care. And I got one of my closest, I want to call her auntie. She took the test for me. So it was like family.
Yeah.
So when she seen the faint line, I kind of already knew that, I was HIV positive. And she was like, Gregory, how are you feeling? And I was like, I'm actually okay. In that very moment, it was scary. I didn't know what to expect, tomorrow. I didn't know what to expect in the next 5 years, because it's been 5 years now that I've been HIV positive, but I'm still living today.
Yeah.
So that moment was very scary, but I was okay. My grandmother came down the hallway. She was there to console me. Even told me a little bit of some things that she's been through, her story pertaining to HIV. So it helped me. I wasn't afraid to tell my family. But when it came to disclosing to others, it became a little shaky, because you tell one person, they may comfort you and, ask you, are you okay? But then you tell another person and they're like, wow, they don't want nothing to do with you. You never hear from this person again.
Yeah.
And it's like, what have I done? You may feel as though it's you, but you have to just walk that everyday life, go take it day by day. First, find yourself in it. Because mind you, I'm a young boy in high school, about to leave, ready to graduate. I actually had some problems graduating because of the stress of me trying to get my everyday life back together from this diagnosis piece.
Walk me through a little bit of, or kind of unpack for me rather, what it was. You talked about there being stress, and it sounds like you had a really good support system.
I did.
So first of all,
I
did. Amazing.
Right.
And highly unusual.
Well, and also, to know, you said, I got the diagnosis and I was okay. Your aunt took the test for you. Your grandma's in the hallway supporting you. I think that, that speaks miles to community. We've talked about in other episodes how important for the mental health aspect, community is. And that was a moment. Go ahead.
Absolutely. The community is a big aspect. I'm glad that the community was there for you.
Yes.
And it was so opposite probably of my experience, where we really didn't have much community around where I was, around sort of surrounding people, and certainly not surrounding people around their diagnosis, right?
Okay.
I think I talked about another episode, back in, in Philly, we were calling it the monster. Like, you got the monster. And so, and I'm sure that was not being so said by the time.
Yeah, I've heard of that term, but
that was not, but you've heard the term,
yeah,
right?
I've heard the term.
Not a term that y'all would be using in your generation. And so I'm glad that you had the support. Unpack for me what that stress looked like, though. Like, what was the stress? What was it you were actually feeling around the diagnosis?
I was feeling a little overwhelmed because now for me not taking a pill every day, which I struggle with taking medicine. Like it can be a painkiller. I really don't want to swallow a pill. So that was my main struggle. And then how big it was. I think I started off with Stribild or Complera. And they were like this big of a capsule. So it's like, wow, I have to swallow this every morning or every night. And my adherence to medicine actually was the stress for me.
I see. And so were you afraid that if you didn't adhere to the medication, that would impact your health?
Yeah,
but then also, like, how do I adhere to this medication when I'm taking these big horse pills?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the trade, right? If you want to take one pill a day, you got to take this big horse pill.
Yes.
What, if anything, was there ever a moment where like you met someone who sort of helped you with your adherence? Like, was there anything that changed that for you?
So it was the different programs that after I got my diagnosis, I felt like it was God trying to just like show me a way.
Yeah.
Because he had blessed me with a position at DC Department of Health as a community health impact specialist. So it was all around HIV, learning about HIV, going to these different conferences, meeting people, like not just meeting people, but meeting like extended family, and they've had ways that it helped them take their medicine. Or we would call each other like a buddy, a pill buddy or whatever. You take your medicine. Hey, did you take your medicine today? Yeah, I took my medicine. You took yours yet? And it's different conversations like that, but being comfortable having those conversations.
Absolutely. It sounds like you had a community that helped you like sort of with adherence tools. And as a former adherence specialist, that was what it was all about, right? Like I would put things in my patients' phones, things that I recommend you all try if you're having adherence issues at home. So like I would put like a time, we try to get people to take their medication the same time of day. So I would put in their vitamin time, the pill keychain in case you're at work or wherever you are, you're able to have that thing. So it sounds like you had a good community of people who you could check in. And that's important because as the person who was making that call for a lot of people, I wish they had community they could like, call your brother, call your sister, call your son, and see if y'all all taking medication. I think that's amazing. And how do you feel? Do you feel like there's a difference, particularly with like Black men who have sex with men or Black queer men and white? And I say that because I remember I had a white roommate and he was having brunch at the house and the alarm went off and everybody pulled out their medication and started taking PrEP. And they rolled up to PrEP time. And I was like, we have some similar circles. I don't even know which ones of my friends are positive.
Exactly.
And like I work in this, we don't have those do you feel like that's the same thing?
I feel like it is.
Yeah.
I do.
Why do you think that is though?
Because we don't, I guess it's the vulnerability with each other.
Is it stigma?
Or maybe stigma.
Yeah. What stigma still exists?
Probably honestly being positive. And I want to circle back to that because I think when we discuss the Black community in general, we are a very hush-hush community. Everything stays in mama's house.
Yeah.
Everything is about what goes on inside our house. And we don't tell other people about what's going on in our house. And especially with something like HIV that has such a negative stigma, people are not going out there to yell from the rooftops that I have HIV. And the reality is even though I think the queer community may be sex positive, they still might not be HIV aware positive. And so I think that's the reason why we see that, because that, whether you're gay, straight, bi, whatever you identify as a person of color, we tend to not share any of our struggles, whether that be like mental, physical, emotional. And I think that's why you see it in that community. I'm interested to know though, when you were talking about your story, I thought it was, again, very telling that you said that there was a sense of calm for you, but then you also said about stress. So in the moment of the diagnosis, you were actually fine, but later on you started to have the stress. I think that's where stigma kicks in for you, right? Because around your close community, you were comfortable, but around the greater community, you were not. So talk to me about the difference in that and why it was so hard for you when it came to the outer community to not be as open about your diagnosis versus with your personal tight-knit, family.
I think because I knew that there were like people out there that wouldn't want nothing to do with me. And that would hurt me. Like what they call it? Rejection. Yeah. Rejection kind of hurts, like.
Yeah. No one wants to be rejected. And I think, we talked about this on another episode, but finding your self-worth after the diagnosis.
Exactly.
And high school is such a pivotal time, right? Like we're all ugly. We all had acne. We all wanted to look our best. We were awkward, you know what I mean? Going through puberty.
Yeah.
And so there's already this unsaid pressure about that time in your life where you're trying to figure out who you are and establish your own value of who you are. But then this diagnosis kind of plays a part on really your self-worth. And then the aspect of rejection, right? Like the reality is no matter who you are, you want to be wanted.
Exactly.
So talk to me about navigating dating in the space of being, with partners or disclosing, because, you've talked about it a little bit, but share a little bit more about that.
So dating, like I would actually wait when I was dating. I would meet someone, we would use condoms while we're, having sex if I didn't disclose. But I would actually wait before I disclosed to the person, maybe a few weeks or a month, because I just didn't want that to be I didn't want HIV to be, I didn't want people to, when they see me, I don't want you to just see HIV. And it's just like, that's all you see. Oh, this person's living with HIV and you trying to tell me ways of how to communicate my HIV when you're not even the person that's dealing with it. You're on the outside looking in. I'm the one that got to take this pill every day, but you're the one that's actually feeling some type of way. How? So, I waited to definitely disclose to people. And honestly, I can't say I did too much dating yet.
Wow.
I just
5 years in, you're
5 years
still
in.
hesitant.
Yeah.
I think that's telling.
Yeah.
I think it speaks to the community. And I think it's important that you named the rejection. It was what I was waiting for you to say. Because as a community of people who, a lot of times, we've already felt that rejection. And the rejection comes way before you tell people you're gay. Particularly for us Black gay boys that's femme, mother knew. The girls knew. And what they don't realize, when they were correcting the feminine behavior, what you really were doing was rebuking the gay.
Yeah, you was.
You was letting me know, like, and don't do that either. But without saying it. So a lot of us have felt that rejection, that I'll accept you, but not the fullness of who you are.
Exactly, yep.
That being an underlining. And so here, when people are now trying to define you by a chronic condition and then reject you for on top of a lifetime of rejection.
Exactly.
Baby, you still trying to accept yourself.
Yeah.
And as soon as you get a foot in, feel like, accepting yourself, here comes something else to knock you back down to tell you that you're not worthy, to make you feel like you're not. So that makes total sense that you feel that way. Do you think it's better now? Like hookup culture, Jacked, Grindr, it has these features.
Right. Does that make you more comfortable now? Like, are you more open to disclosing because it's like a part of the conversation?
Somewhat, kind of, it's like, it's in the middle now. Now, before, no, I wouldn't disclose at all, especially on those type of sites, because it was like, I actually did disclose one point. I forgot about this, but this is a big point in my life. I disclosed on Jacked and social media, and someone had actually they was doing it around in DC though. They took a few different people that was disclosing on social media and they posted it on the Instagram page. And it was like, even though I had already disclosed to the world, I didn't tell my story on my Facebook. Yeah. My family knows, I'm becoming to be comfortable with myself.
Right.
But this person does this and it just like shut me down a little bit. Cause it's like, why are people so cruel?
Yeah.
Like you don't, it made me not want to disclose anymore, or not anymore, but right at that time, or not even deal with anybody.
Yeah. Or it just didn't create a space for you to feel open about what you felt like you took power of. Yes. I can only imagine trying to step out and tell people my story, and then you take my story and try to use it against me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can only imagine that. And you also said that when it came to, disclosing, the apps kind of make it iffy or, somewhat in the middle for you. But, how are you finding in your own personal circles the conversation now that you're saying, like, if you can get on an app and see that, is it now, because y'all just said there's really no dynamic in y'all's community as far as people disclosing or telling your friend that you have it. So, like, is this now, are we starting to see a movement? This is for both of y'all. Like, are we starting to now see where we're moving forward and people are, like, disclosing this more?
Kind of.
So yeah, it's like
It's still
somewhere.
50-50, and that's so crazy. Like, here we are years later. I was diagnosed in 2008. So here it is, 2022. It is many years later. Many years later. It's really like a long time, right? But so much hasn't changed.
Yeah.
And that's what's so... But I really believe, and I always say this, our community, what we lack the most is eldership. What we lack the most is people who can go before you and say, because if it wasn't for the eldership, I would still be that person that's like afraid to disclose. I was so afraid of dating. And I didn't want to go on a date because I was still carrying that thing like, I got the monster. That was still in my subconscious. It wasn't until elders sort of came and had to sit me down and like let me know, like you give people the cue on your self-worth. So people are reflecting what you're putting out. Changed my life because if I come in, this is work, this is HIV status, this is anything. If you come in and you're apologetic, then you're teaching people how to treat you. You're teaching people how to treat you around that specific issue. But when you come in like, sure of my worthiness, sure of this being something that's a thing, you worry about protecting your own health.
Exactly.
You do what you need to do. You navigate this comfortably. I will be navigating mine as well. I will be undetected, not for you, but for me.
But for me.
I'm gonna go to my doctor and get tested and do my full panel every 2 months for me, because I want to make sure that I'm good. And I don't know you like that either. You know, when you have that attitude towards it, it literally changed how people receive me. And if you ever see me on the app, it is right on the profile. Way before they had that as an option, I was already putting unpositive, undetectable. Way before the CDC was saying you equal you. But that was because of arms being around me. I would never stand in front of that and pretend that confidence came by osmosis. It did not. That came from people having to build me up. And I think even when we have eldership and protection and house mothers and all of these things, we don't have it specifically around that issue. And a lot of them didn't have it to give us. So I think it's important for us. These type of platforms are important. People hearing your story is important for that.
Yeah, and that's another support system that I did have was like house mothers. Like when I got connected with Us Helping Us, people into living, you know, on Georgia Avenue, I met someone. I went to Denham the first day I got there. I had met Caleb Barton, and he sat with me, asked me, you know, was just asking me a few questions, and I just came out and told him my story. You know, I told him unapologetically about me, and he was like, you know what, I'm going to make you my daughter. And that conversation just went just like that. And to share, you know, something with him, you know, talk about HIV around him, see the work that he does around, you know, people living with HIV. It's just, it was amazing. And to eventually live in the same house. It was a great support system.
Yeah. And you having that support is important. But in turn, like, how do you show up for people living with HIV now? Because I kind of feel like, because y'all are saying there's literally this ploy and this pull to have this group of community and elders who are doing that. I mean, essentially, you're next, right?
Yeah.
You're the next advocate. You're the next savior for the next person going through this. So what does mentorship look like to you? How do you show up in spaces for people that need it? Because I think it's important for people who are listening, who are watching this podcast, who might be listening, they may be negative, but they can still show up for people in their lives that are positive. So like, what does that look like? If it's me and I want to show up for my friend who just told me that they're HIV positive, what does that look like?
Just support. I would say support them, talk with them, you know, ask them different questions, ask them how are they feeling. Checking in, definitely checking in, not always bringing it up. You know, you don't have to always bring up their condition, but definitely just checking in with them, being an actual friend to that person, especially that they've shared something with you that has actually like changed their life. You know, no matter what, that diagnosis will change your life, everything for you.
Yeah.
You know,
what do you wish somebody would have told you? Like, if you could go back 5 years ago, what do you wish somebody would have told you about this journey? Somebody would have told you about your health. Somebody would have told you about the decisions that you make. What do you wish somebody would have told you diagnosis day?
I honestly wish someone would have just sat down and told me to be more careful out here, especially dealing with older men, because it was actually an older guy that I was dealing with. And mind you, I'm just in high school, but I'm dealing with this 30-plus-year-old man. So just to be more careful with older guys, because you may trust them. And you may think you can trust them. And because they're older, they got it all together. You know, all of these things. But they can be some snakes too. And you just have to be careful You just have to be careful.
That is an episode in itself. 15 snaps for that.
Yes.
Because so very similar story.
Really? Wow.
An older guy, and what was so crazy when I went to tell my mother, and I was like, child, I was doing my slow breaths, like, here she goes. She gonna be a black mama. Here she about to be dramatic. And it was so funny because my friend has a play out, and in the play, the mother says it exactly the way my mother says it. I sit on the table, I'm like, Mom, I need to talk to her, and she's like, you don't have the virus, do you? And I'm like, what is up with black moms and saying the virus? Like, what are y'all talking about? Like, they're talking about a handbook to y'all and make y'all all like say this? Like, what are y'all talking about? The virus. Sure, Mom, I have hepatitis. Like, no, okay. So she's like, you have the virus? I'm like, yes. And she tells me, she discloses to me at that time that, and I remember the guy having a sister. I remember one time he was like dropping me off and we had to take his sister to work. And she's like, yeah, his sister called me. And she told me like, your son gay. And I was like, well, I don't think you need to hear that, Mom. But she's like, your son's gay and he's messing with my brother and my brother has AIDS. You know, then they were saying things like full-blown AIDS. Yeah, it was very ghetto times. Yeah. So she was like, you know, my brother has full-blown AIDS and he's not taking his medication and he's trying to take as many people down as he can. And she was like, and I know your son's in college.
Wow.
I remember picking him up from the campus and I told my brother to leave him alone and he wouldn't. He won't stop messing with him. And she was like, I couldn't say nothing in the car, but like, you need to get your son. I was like, well, Mama, damn it.
Right. Why didn't you say nothing?
You ain't saying nothing. Me and my mother had never had that conversation. And so back to your point, Leah, there's so much hush-hush. Yeah. There's so much that to the point where like stigma in a whole nother area prevented us from being able to have that conversation.
Exactly.
So kudos to that conversation because a lot of our introduction, because of stigma, it opens up the door for people being predatory, right? Like in a world before Grindr, in a world before Jack, most of us was getting on these regular party lines. Yeah. And who were we being introduced to? My first was 25. After that, I was dating 30-year-old men who were married, who were, and you're so young and you feel like you're so bad.
Is that common though? Like, is that common?
Yes.
Why? Like what? Like I guess for me, you know, and granted, people's preference are their preference, right? But what is it specifically that makes it, I guess, desirable in that community to want to date like the such a drastic age difference? Not that it's not done in heterosexual communities, because let's be real, you know, it does. But I'm interested to know like why that seems like a common thread.
A lack of safe space. So if I'm 14, I can't have this conversation at all with my mother.
Wow.
Then I'm getting on these spaces where you think these older guys, when they see you, you are marked. They see you like, oh, easy, I can get him to do whatever because you're young and you think you know everything and you do not have the experience to match whatever you feeling in your body. Yeah. And so do you want to mess? If you are somebody, especially these DL guys, especially these guys who want to go in and out, it is advantageous for you to get a young person that you can mold into the partner you want, as opposed to dealing with someone who is fully realized. Like I come with you going to do, like I'm out. And I'm not coming back in. I come with regulations. I come with boundaries. That's hard to navigate. For a lot of people, you know, we're not little Susie and Bobby. We don't get to develop normally when it comes to relationships. So we didn't get to, while y'all were like holding hands and writing our life on a piece of paper, we were suppressing who we were. And you'll meet a lot of people, I'm 34, so you'll meet a lot of people my age who don't have a lot of relationship experience, if they have any relationship experience at all. And people judge our community a lot and talk about the hookup culture, but they don't realize it's all we had. Like many of us would have given anything to be, I remember the first time, I was married at the time. I'm not married no more, y'all. Very much looking. I had to let them know, okay, because you don't know who out here watching. But I remember being married. I was at the mall with my husband, and we were looking over the balcony, and I saw these teenagers, teenage boys holding hands. And then in a little while, these two little girls walked. They were holding hands, and I am crying at the mall. Because I was like, I don't know what that was like. I never had puppy love before. I never had, everything I had, even then, was predatory. And I thought it was puppy love. And then you look back like, I was being conditioned. I was being groomed. Oh my God, my memories are ruined. Like, I never had that. And I remember a boy asking something that would have gotten you canceled today. He was like, can I bring my boyfriend to the dance? And they were like, and that was a very progressive school. I went to a charter school at the time, and they were like, we have to ask you questions if it's okay with everybody. What? Say that now. Say that now. And so I see that, and I think that does play into a large part of like what it means to not only be living in queer, living in MSM, living with HIV, all of those things play in because there is some abnormalities in development. and an opportunity to develop safely.
No, I never thought about that. I never considered that, but that makes a lot of sense.
We don't even consider it because nobody articulates that.
Yeah.
Like, there's not even a safe space that you just created right now for me to have that. This is such a rare space where we even get to have that conversation.
Yeah, positive voices.
Positive voices. Positive voices.
Yeah, no, and I think that's great that you all can see that and identify that in the community because, again, Malachi, you and I have had conversations offline where I was like, I never met a gay man who's like, I'm waiting till marriage to have sex. Yeah. Or, I never met a gay man who's just like super conservative in that space. And we were talking about the difference between obviously like conservative and queer kind of go on the opposite sides of the spectrum as far as what they stand for. But I think, that brings a lot of perspective to people as to why you see that in the community, because I never really thought about kind of like a deferred type of like love, if you will. Like
we're seeing the sexuality first. People, and that's when I separate. And I have a question for you based on this, because when people ask me people ask me sometimes like, why do you accept that people can be MSM, meaning men who have sex with men, and not be gay? And I'm like, well, because my queerness, my gayness is not about who I have sex with alone. There are men who have sex with men and they don't feel anything for men. So if they want to say that they not gay and they just MSM or they like whatever, that makes sense to me, because what I feel is more than just like sex, but we are perceived sex first. The first thing people think about when they think about being gay is what kind of sex we have and who we licking and lapping with. And that's the way we treat each other.
Right.
That's why we are afraid to navigate once you find out you're positive, because dating for us don't look like what's your favorite color?
Exactly.
You top, bottom, verse.
Exactly.
That's what it is. Those are the first things we need to know. And that was my question for you.
That is true.
Do you think that's why it's harder? Do you think if we had a more heteronormative experience, that it would be easier to live with HIV and date with HIV?
I think it would. I think it actually would, because it'd be more intimate instead of, like you said, top, bottom, verse. Like the first thing we ask when we get on the apps or trying to meet people or even walking past.
Roll or rubber.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's
top, bottom, verse, roll rubber.
Asking, not good morning.
Exactly.
Roll or rubber. I got to make the decision right now.
So does it, in y'all's mind, is it harder to date in that sense? Because like for me personally, if I'm on a dating app and a man mentions sex within the first 5 minutes of the conversation, I'm immediately removed. Delete, unblock, unmatch. Like I'm not into it, but it sounds like that's the damn icebreaker for y'all.
Yes. And that's the privilege of a different experience. Because if your experience, you would be conditioned to believe that you lead with this. Again, remember, we're 14, 15, we're talking to grown men. They're immediately, the conditioning isn't that. Nobody ever taught you that you had to separate. And the absence of adults, the absence of trusted adults, the absence of leaders, when people think that they are doing their big one by holding on to God's unchanging hand and not, feeding into us, our gayness, our queerness, our homosexuality, what you're doing is you're leaving children unprotected. You're leaving them to be developed in an area blind leading the blind. We're either learning from our peers or we're learning from people who stand and gain interest in making us and molding us into what they want us to be. So you will be conditioned to be like sex first. Even in places, even in times where I was not having, like I'm not having sex with any of y'all, you're going to want to have your sexual position on your profile. You're going to want to have you're going to have that on there, or you're not going to talk to nobody, because this is the way the community is.
That's the part that's like mind-boggling to me. You know what I mean? I think it's just unfortunate because, to be honest, even if that's really not your nature, right? Like even if you truly are not that type of person where that's like what you're trying to lead with, to your point, that leaves you in the deep abyss of the dating sites, which is already, hard to make a connection, because let's be real, it's all physical, which, there's studies that say that technically, dating apps where it's simply swipe aren't super successful because it's purely off looks. You can't truly gauge whether you're going to connect with somebody by the way they look. They might look great. That doesn't mean that they're an ideal match for you just because they look great. So, that alone is not truly the essence. And I'm not saying people can't meet online, hook up, and it take them somewhere. There are people that have happened to, which great for them. It's not my testimony, but I ain't, you know what I'm saying? But to me, it's just kind of unfortunate because, again, to your point, the privilege of it all, I do get the option to be like, I'm not interested in that. And that's immediately a no for me. Whereas, on these apps that y'all are on, it's not giving the opportunity to not be sexual first. And I think that's like a missed mark because again, you really could connect with somebody. You know what I mean? Like, and again, we're talking about putting HIV status on a thing. Well, you see that I'm swiping the other way because I don't know, but I've never got to know the person. I've never got to know who you are. So even on the terms of if we're just talking about disclosing HIV status to meet somebody, or on the planes of just like getting to know you as a human before I decide if you a top, bottom, reverse, you know, those things it's unfortunate to me when I hear people in the LGBTQ community talk about that, because I do think that there's missed marks. And again, heterosexual couples do it too. There's just, you know, a difference. I think that there's a little bit more etiquette, but that's the etiquette for y'all's space. But I find that I disagree with that just because there's just more to people than your status. There's more to people than what you like to do in the bedroom. So that's an interesting perspective for sure.
And I appreciate you giving voice to that because there are so many, well, maybe not so many, but there are some. There are some queer men that are very much in that bracket of like, you know, waiting to have sex for whatever
extent that is. Right.
You just don't always get visibility or voice in those spaces because people will treat you the way they see you.
Yeah.
And so they see us if they see your community as hypersexualized, well, that's what you're going to get.
Yeah.
So.
And then like feeding into that though, like what does it look like when you feed into that stigma, when you, I mean, not that stigma, but when you feed into that stereotype, what that looks like. Because again, you can't even show up as yourself if you truly aren't this hypersexualized person, but you want companionship. Like stepping up into the format for that. That's my thing. And I get everybody's not on that. Most apps are hookup culture, regardless of who they are, who the users are. But I just kind of wish it was a little bit more depth to that.
Greg, what's the non-hookup apps?
The non-hookup apps?
What are the non-hookup apps?
Oh, I don't know.
Exist?
I don't think I know all nine.
So, okay, I was on Hinge.
I know
I hate Hinge.
Snippies.
But they would definitely hit me up on, well, Hinge, you put your status on there, though.
Oh, Hinge. Okay.
Really?
Yeah, so you put your status on there. So once you put that up, it's like, well, child, I guess we talking about it. You know?
I've never even seen that.
Yeah.
Do they only do that for gay men?
I don't know.
We're going to look at our apps and figure that out.
So I'm going to have to download it because I didn't see that.
I've never seen that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they put it on there. It's on there. And then it welcomes a certain demographic. They fine on it. I ain't gonna lie.
What's the demographic they welcome?
What's the demographic they welcome?
Yeah, they welcome.
The same demographic as like Tinder.
Jack. Oh,
not Jack. It's not as heavy on that. So I would say the same demographic as Tinder, but I tend to find that even the guys who want to just hook up, they're more refined.
On Hinge? On Hinge, yeah. Well, people say that Hinge is like the real dating, like if you want a date.
Yeah.
Because there's like levels, right? Like the Tinder is straight hookup. You know, the Bumble is like, it's cute. And I wonder how Bumble works for y'all because, you know, Bumble is technically supposed to be the woman swipes and engages with the man first.
I don't think Bumble is.
I've never seen Bumble.
When it comes to Bumble.
Oh, y'all are not?
Yeah,
okay, Bumble.
Yeah,
so speaking of like kind of what we're talking about with the hookup apps, it's really like a sex positive culture.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Sex positive culture, you know, meaning like, yeah, we are giving people autonomy of their body. We are supporting whatever decisions people make and allowing them to have sex. How do you think sex positive culture affects or fits in people living with HIV?
Or does it? Or does it?
I believe it does, depending on how a person looks at it. Because when you're being sex positive, you should just be open. I mean, I feel like be open to all, you know, whether you're using a condom with it or not. So, like, if you hasn't disclosed or if you're sex positive, you just strap it up and you're just actually having sex with, I will feel whoever. Correct me if I'm wrong, though.
Yeah. I mean, I think to your point, it's perspective, which, you know, we've talked about disclosure and like, you know, how that looks. In you said 5 years in, you're still trying to navigate, you know, dating and the way you date. At this point, are you disclosing up front? You said a month or so, but like if you get, what is your like threshold for disclosing? Like, is it like I go on a couple dates, I'm feeling you, yes? Or if I know we about to have sex, yes? Or not even necessarily if we're having sex, like what does that look like for you?
I would say I go on a couple of dates and then yes, like I need to get a feel of the person first. Like I said, even if we do maybe have sex that one time, I'll have the condom. You know, you don't always have to bring a condom. I'll have it because I'm the one that I want to protect you, but I also want to protect myself.
Yeah. Speaking of protect yourself, talk to me about your journey medically speaking. Like, what has it been like for your care? What does it look like, you know, over these last 5 years? Like how, because let's be real, like Black folk don't go to the doctor. They do not. And so, you know, when you get this type of diagnosis, how does that change your perspective on how you see healthcare?
It changes like, kind of drastically. Like I had to like actually say, okay, I have to go to the doctors every 3 months to make sure that I'm still undetectable. I have to go to the doctors every 3 months to make sure I haven't accumulated another sexually transmitted disease, you know, aside from HIV. Yeah. It just made me where I had to do it, you know, aside from that. Okay, I can go to the doctors once a year, get a physical. I'm fine. Blood work done. I'm good. Yeah. But it changed when, you know, HIV came into play because it's like, wow. And now I have to go get this prescription. If I want to take my medicine, I got to go get a prescription. But I will speak on like recently about actually not taking medicine. Just like getting to a point where as though, you know, I had got maybe stressed out again and I stopped taking my medicine and I had a conversation with my doctor. I went and seen her and she was like, well, Gregory, I don't want you to just play with it. Like if you're going to take the medicine, you have to take the medicine. But if you're not, then just right now for your mental and your mental health, then don't. And it actually, that helped me a little bit because it was like, okay, it's not like I'm forced to take this. It is still a choice, but yes, I do choose health, and yes, I choose to take my medicine. So yes, I am back taking my medicine now. But yeah, I think I felt like I needed that break.
Thank you for sharing that point. I think that's really important. And just to get into the why she told you that is because you definitely want people to, if whatever choice you're going to make a choice that's going to keep you safe. And a lot of people don't realize that start-stop thing that you feel like is just a personal choice. Yeah. Now, once you get into that medication, you run the risk of building resistance. And when you build a resistance, it's not just to that drug, it's every drug in that class. Yeah. So we'd rather you take a break because you're going through whatever than to build a resistance. And now we have to have a whole nother care and treatment plan for you. So definitely appreciate you sharing that. Thank you for coming and being vulnerable. Yes, you're welcome. We really appreciate you having this conversation. We don't take it lightly. Where can people find you?
Facebook at my name, Gregory Meredith. Instagram, I think I'm on there as the Reinvented Q. Okay. And that's just the Q. Okay. Yeah, but that's where you can find me. Don't have too many platforms right now, but they're growing, you know, as time goes on. So absolutely. I'm excited.
Yeah, absolutely. And we thank you so much for stopping by Positive Voices.
Of course.
Again, using your story to help elevate people. And again, if you're watching or listening, please make sure that you guys use the hashtag Positive Voices. We want to know what you think about Gregory's story. If you want to share some of your insight or some of your experiences, we would love to hear from you. Also, go to the website. It's dcnshiv.org/podcast. Go there. We have resources. We have a survey that you can take, and we would love to hear from you. So again, thank you, Gregory. We appreciate you. And listen, we'll be back on another episode of Positive Voices. I'm Leah Henry. This is my co-host,
Malachi Stewart.
And we will see you next time.
Bye.
Positive Voices is produced by Chris and Tiana. Our production team is led by C3 Creative Agency.